Welcome to Diplomatic Channel this week. I am Amarachi Ubani. 5 African leaders were in Paris this weekend for a meeting called by the French President Francois Hollande to discuss cooperation in fighting a common threat to all of them. Boko Haram has now been known to have extended its activities beyond Nigeria, and neighbouring Cameroon and Niger Republic are feeling the brunt. Cameroon lost a soldier over the weekend and 10 Chinese nationals were kidnapped following an attack by Boko Haram north of the country. The attack was targeted at employees of a Chinese company in the town of Waza, just a few miles from the border with Nigeria. The Chinese embassy is now working with the government of Cameroon to locate the missing workers. But before then, the week before, Boko Haram was said to have bombed a small bridge linking Nigeria to Cameroon in Borno State. While the Nigerian military has stepped up efforts in the northeast, especially in the emergency state, it seems the group has taken its interests elsewhere. Unfortunately, there was a suicide blast in the Sabongeri area of Kano City. The blast was said to have been caused by a car bomb. The Sabongeri area of Kano has been said to have been targeted on numerous occasions by Boko Haram. Well, President Goodluck Jonathan, during his meeting in Paris, addressed the other leaders on challenges faced in dealing with Boko Haram. I'm going to read an excerpt from that meeting. The president said, "Without doubt, your concern and empathy with the governments and people of Nigeria is a clear demonstration of true solidarity and brotherhood in ensuring that the security challenges facing our country are addressed in a definitive and conclusive manner." He goes on to say the group is hostile to democracy. It uses every means to indoctrinate its members. Its ultimate objective is to destabilize a country and take over Nigeria in order to turn it into a base operation in West Africa and the entire continent. Now, concerning solution to the problem, the president said, "It is the regional and global character of terrorists' campaign that makes it imperative that we explore and adopt a regional and global approach to addressing this insurgency and menace. Indeed, in the spirit of collective regional security, it is important that we accept that an attack on one country is an attack on all of us and our common humanity." Now, at the end of the meeting, the president and his counterparts joined in a press briefing to inform on their decision. The meeting had not lasted very long, but it seemed it was enough to make the leaders reach a resolve.
Our commitment is for a regional approach, because without the countries in West Africa and Central Africa coming together, we will not be able to crush these terrorists. Boko Haram is no longer the local terror group with some religious sentiment that started in Nigeria in 2002 to 2009. In fact, from 2002 to 2004, from 2009 to date, it has changed and is operating clearly as an Al-Qaeda organization, can better be described as Al-Qaeda in West and Central Africa. It's no longer the Boko Haram that came with the sentiments that Western education is prohibited and that women must not go to school, nobody should attend a formal institution based on Western education. It's no more operating under that guise. But I have to commend my colleagues that we have all collectively agreed that we'll work together to make sure that we rout out these terrorists. And for the Chibok girls, of course, we've also heard from our host, we are totally committed to ensuring that these girls are found wherever they are and make sure that they join their families. We'll do all our best. Presently, Nigeria has 20,000 troops in this part of the country, the northern part of the country, the northeastern part of the country, where we have these terrorists. We've been scanning the areas with surveillance aircrafts, and of course also using local intelligence sources. This is being complemented now by France, UK, US, and other countries. So I believe with this cooperation within the sub-region and nationally, we'll be able to find answers to these missing girls.
On a bilateral basis, countries would implement coordinated patrols with the aim of combating Boko Haram and locating the missing Chibok girls. They will also establish a system to pool intelligence in order to support this operation and establish mechanisms for information exchange on trafficking of weapons and bolster measures to secure weapons stockpiles and establish mechanisms for border surveillance.
The issue of terror and suicide bombing just started in Nigeria in about 2009. So we didn't have the architecture to deal with that. It's now that we are building the capacity. It's a different form of crime, a different form of criminality. And you must have trained people, which we are training people now, acquire relevant equipment that we are acquiring and we are receiving now. And I bet that as we progress, you will see that Nigerian military and intelligence services will cope with it. In fact, they are building capacity and increasing in competencies on a daily basis. So there's a lot of biases. We have challenges, no doubt about that, but definitely we'll overcome it.
On a multilateral basis, they would establish an intelligence pooling unit and create a dedicated team to identify means of implementation and draw up, during a second phase, a regional counterterrorism strategy in the framework of the Lake Chad Basin Commission. Participants in the agreement have also committed to accelerating the implementation of international sanctions against Boko Haram and Saro and their main leaders within the United Nations framework as a priority. The French president had already promised help, but ruled out sending troops on the ground. As for other members of the international community, the call to help is an obligation.
We are all coordinated, we are all focused. This doesn't stop at borders. Terrorism does not know borders, and so we are going to work in a collective manner to get the job done.
We can help with that. That is why we're offering to embed military advisors with the Nigerian headquarters. We work with Nigeria in many other ways on counterterrorism.
But President Goodluck Jonathan made it clear that even before the call for help, the Nigerian military has not been sitting twiddling its thumbs.
If the security services in Nigeria were incompetent of dealing with Boko Haram, I don't think anybody would have been staying in Abuja now. There were bombings in Niger State, there were bombings in Kano State. So now that, the bombings have been limited, or the excesses have been limited to the fringes of the border between Borno State, Damawa State, and Yobe State, and the Cameroon border, that means that they've been able to push up the Boko Haram to that level. So the feeling that the Nigerian army have no competence of meeting the Boko Haram is not correct. Globally, all the presidents I can attest to the fact that the Nigerian soldiers have been involved in international peacekeeping, and they've been doing wonderfully well from the 60s till date. In Africa, Nigeria is one of the countries known for peacekeeping. If they are so inept, they wouldn't have been used. So that is not true.
Post-Boko Haram crisis, efforts at the international level would involve supportive programs fostering the socio-economic development of the region, with emphasis on gender equality, the rights of women and girls, and in particular, their right to education, as well as increasing women's participation in all decision-making processes and supporting victims of sexual violence, including through legal assistance, medical care, and psychosocial support. We'll be right back.
In other diplomatic news, the U.S. Africa Command has promised to help Nigeria look for the missing Chibok schoolgirls. Set up in 2007 in recognition of Africa's growing importance and to coordinate U.S. military activity on the continent, Africa retains some 5,000 troops in Africa, primarily in Djibouti.
What we are doing is we have a small team down there that is working with the Nigerians as well as our international partners to help them however we can, and also assess if there are any other ways we can help. So this is, and we are supporting and responding to requests from the Nigerian government. We are not going to to do anything except what they want. And that does not include at this point any operation that we will participate in. We will help them with information and things like that.
And in Europe, NATO says it's seen no signs of withdrawal of Russian troops from the Ukrainian border despite an order from President Vladimir Putin. The Russian president had issued the order because the spring maneuvers were over. Parties are hoping the move would ease tension in Russia's standoff with the West over Ukraine before Kyiv holds its presidential elections on Sunday.
Now I think it's the third Putin statement on withdrawal of Russian troops, but so far we haven't seen any withdrawal at all. I strongly regret that because a withdrawal of Russian troops would be a first important contribution to de-escalating the crisis. And I mean, there is no reason whatsoever why the Russians should mass military forces to that at that scale along Ukrainian borders.
The defense trial of the former Serb chief Radovan Mladic has begun in The Hague. Mladic was indicted in 1995 by the UN War Crimes Tribunal in The Hague for genocide during the Bosnian War, including the siege of Sarajevo and the 1995 massacre of 8,000 Muslim men and boys in Srebrenica. More than 10,000 people were killed by snipers, machine guns and heavy artillery during the Sarajevo siege. The horrors of the siege, together with the Srebrenica massacre, eventually galvanized the world opinion in support of the campaign of Western airstrikes on Bosnian Serb targets that brought the conflict to an end shortly after. Finally, Saudi Arabia has shut down its embassy in Tripoli, citing security concerns in Libya. The Saudi Arabian ambassador to Libya said in a statement that the embassy would reopen when the situation stabilizes. Algeria has also closed its embassy and consulate, saying its diplomat faced a real and imminent threat. The move comes after a rogue former army general sent his parliamentary force into Tripoli on Sunday to attack the parliament building. Libya's leaders have struggled to bring stability to the country since Muammar Gaddafi was ousted in 2011.